And welcome back to the Sleeping Grush podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm still Jon.
Are you still Jon?
Still, yeah.
That's good. He's been sitting across the table from me for about 20 minutes now, and it's still Jon. And down here at the other end of the table, we have Jager Madsen on the tech, and across from me sits the wonderful Jennifer Felix, who is a member of DGS and is going to talk to us a lot today about art. Before that, however, I should remind you that we are brought to you today by Cardboard Corner Cafe. John's already giggling.
You can do it, buddy. Just hang in there.
I am a member of this podcast.
Still Matt.
We are brought to you today by Cardboard Corner Cafe. It is a wonderful gaming cafe here in Kansas City, Missouri. If you're ever in town, definitely stop by. They have a ton of games. They have a wonderful waffle menu, and they have a bar full of drinks. So you can sit at a table, you can play your favorite board game, you can enjoy some great food, and have a drink. And the room that we are in today, this amazing RPG room, has been furnished by them and we've been allowed to come in and just sit for a few minutes. See, it's all over the place, right?
You're all over that today. Yeah. It gives a character.
It does give a character. That's right. This is a lived-in world. Anyway, if you're in Kansas City, stop by Cardboard Corner Cafe. They are fantastic folks, and it is a fantastic place to play some games. So today we are on our third episode, and there's some amazing stuff going on today. First of all, sitting in front of me, since those of you that are listening can't see it, sitting in front of me are two brand new starter boxes with some amazing new art.
So these, we sell Free Blades models a couple different ways. We sell them in individual clamshells, so you can get a single model or sometimes pairs,
Sure.
Creatures, small creatures. We also sell what we call starter sets, which are already made 150 gold value free bands. And we've done that since the very beginning. Usually 6 models, sometimes, more or less, but typically 6. And when we started out, we had the covers of these boxes were photographs of painted models. So we put some painted models in some terrain. We take photos, some better than others, certainly. And that is what, the front of the box showed. The back of the box showed, something different. But the front was a photograph of that painted freeband. We have changed the style of those boxes. And now the front is an illustration of those models acting as a freeband in the world of Phalon. And the back is either a row of the painted models or renders for the newer ones with their names. And so you can associate who's with who in the box. And the art is by Neo Mendoza.
Yes.
And he is fantastic. We just love him.
I cannot say enough good things about this person's art.
He gets Phalon.
He does.
I think is the thing I'd say about it. He understands the world. The color palettes are always totally appropriate to the theme of that particular faction. And he captures the characters' motion, poses, lighting, all the different things about it. We'll post pictures of these box covers along with the release of the podcast on Discord and a couple other social media locations. You'll be able to see them, but you'll be able to see them at conventions and other places where you buy these your favorite retail store. But the style is just so much better than a photograph of painted models. And you get, a look at the models on the box. You just, the front is kind of eye-catching.
That is. It's very eye-catching.
And we want to continue that trend. So we already have, I think we talked about before the podcast started, we have 2 already out there this way, Ruin and Falcar. I thought there was a third one, but I guess I can't recall it, so maybe not. But from now on, as these boxes get redone, same set of models, but much more eye-catching and cool, illustration showing you your favorite characters out in the world. So a big improvement, I say.
I totally agree. I think it's an amazing improvement. And Jen, we're kind of talking in your field here. So let's, what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of interview Jen and have her tell us about the process of art here at DGS Games. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about about these scenes that you've been coordinating with our painters, and tell us about how these starter set scenes came about.
It's been a really fun process. The first thing we do, obviously, is identify which models are going to be in it. We break down which ones are heroes, which ones are followers. Followers are often kind of in the background. They're not as central as the leader. We've been talking ways to add in how do we visually show their magic? Because that's not something that we
Oh,
sculpt
right.
in
Look
the
at that.
model.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've got to say, I don't want to interrupt Jen, but I've got to say that the way they show their magic is really cool. Those you've probably seen the Ruin box because we released that right out of the gate back.
It's
in
also the
December.
cover art of the current LRB,
Right.
Open Rulebook.
So if you haven't really taken a look at how that magic is manifesting in that picture, it's awesome.
Right, the vulture.
Yes,
Caster, she's got a giant shadowy vulture coming out behind her, that
And the
indicates
Fire
that she's
Wizard
gonna be
has
carried.
flame,
yes,
right, for the
yeah.
Falcon piece. Yeah. Yeah.
So-
I did not think of that. I mean, I thought of it individually as I look at the illustration, how cool
Right.
that was. But the idea of, having that be something that Jen works with the artist on as a, definitive go-to for every piece of art, it's awesome.
Yeah,
Right,
that
and the
is really awesome.
cryomancer is, manipulating large chunks of ice to move
Right.
his free band around.
Right.
Because obviously his ability to control the map, create obstacles for others that don't impede his own faction
Right.
is one of the things that makes him special. So we take all of the lore and the things that Gooch really loves and the things that John designed, and Neo and I talk about how do we visually give you that story?
Right.
Where do these people live? What does the land around them look like? How do we make that interesting? Where are they normally fighting?
Mhm.
Are they going to have, I think Falcar has some buildings around it. We based the Khazaric on the taiga,
Right.
and that let us bring in some beautiful colors and trees. We did some great plain stuff with Erdogar.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So Jen's really speaking my language here, telling the story through what we do, right? Because those of you who may not know me or have met me yet, I love to sell stories. That's kind of my thing. So this art really speaks to me. It's very evocative for me, and I love that it's sitting on the front of our starter sets right now.
Oh, absolutely. Because you look at this and you can almost instantly see yourself in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we are going to, like John said, post those up on the website to show those off. I believe that Jager said that we could go ahead and post those.
If you're listening to this podcast episode and you can't see them on Discord, scream at us.
yes,
Because we've
do.
forgotten there's something up behind you. Don't scream at Jen. Jen's awesome. Scream at me or Matt, and we'll get them up.
We'll
But we
get
should.
it taken care
We've
of.
been pretty good about timing when we talk about something until we go where this is a video cast.
Yep.
When we talk about something you can't see while we're talking about it, which we try to be good about getting it up there
Yeah.
quickly, at the same time as or right after the podcast release. So
Right.
And when you see
Check
how
our work.
beautiful it is and you need to have one of your own in your house to look at, when you place your online order, you need to drop a note to John that you actually want a box.
They are really pretty. They're really.
yeah, that's right. So it's a good point that she just brought up. When you make an online order, you get your starter set in Ziploc bags
Right.
to keep the volume, the price of the weight, the price of the mailing down. If you just really had to have a box and don't have a retailer nearby, put that note in, and we can make that happen. It will tweak up, the shipment a little bit, but not too much, depending on what
Sure.
you order.
Yeah.
Or always patronize your local friendly game store.
Absolutely.
That carries free blades, or ask them to carry free blades and buy them there.
That's definitely, we want to absolutely give a shout out to all of our friendly game stores that carry our line, and to those of you who will be carrying our line in the future as well. And folks, those of you who are listening, that you're the ones that are making that possible,
Right.
going in and talking to your store owners and playing the game in the store. So we thank you for all of your efforts in that direction, and that is a great way to see our products on the shelves of your local friendly game store.
Yes, and Art is here supporting that by making it visually appealing so that your store owner takes one look and is in love.
And falls in love. That's right. That's what we want, definitely. So Jen, let's talk a little bit about what you do here for the company. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be with a bunch of ragamuffins
Oh.
at DGS Games.
Did she know you were going to ask her that before you did?
No,
Oh,
no,
that's
no.
awesome.
Looking at the blue.
So we've all turned towards Jen with kind of like our hand on our chins. Like,
We are.
Hey, I'm dying to hear this.
Yes, so long ago in the wild plains of Wyoming, I decided to run far away from home to go to college. And I landed at Rockhurst University here in Kansas City on the Missouri side. Happened to fall in love with a Kansas farm boy and stayed in the area, and that was step one. He's actually the one who played tabletop skirmish games. It wasn't something I had ever dipped my toe into before Freeblades. I was an online MMORPG player. And he talked me into painting a model with his friend Brian Bledsoe because I was an artist.
Look at that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was the first gateway. And then the other part was he was working with Brian at the time at P&G, and the Khazaric were being made. And Brian was consulted on it. The Cryomancer is actually sculpted to look like Brian. And he basically sold Chris on it at work talking about it. So when that Kickstarter came out, my husband bought 2 starter boxes and said, pick yours. And so that was how I ended up here. And the reason that I picked Haradel, which is very much my go-to faction, was actually the Apprentice Knight of Tanar. She's a female figure in normal plate mail. She's not in boob armor.
He's not in a chainmail bikini.
There's no chainmail bikini. There's no
Interesting.
boob plate thing going on. It's the same type of armor that the other Apprentice Knights are wearing. And that spoke to me, and that was actually my gateway. And then I played a few games and fell in love.
Awesome.
You know, I have to say, as part of the original crew, when we made the decision that we were not going to go down that road, we were not going to, we were going to go the other direction. We're not going to objectify women in any way. There are some female models that have less clothing on than others.
Sure.
Because of what their culture is, because of where they're located,
Right.
from a climate standpoint.
Right.
But certainly the ones in armor or the ones that are adventuring need to look like they're going to adventure and they're not going to Miami Beach. So I can't, I've always been happy about that decision. We've got a lot of accolades, but I am just learning that is one of the things that got Jennifer playing Freeblades in the first place,
Right.
which, like she said, was the gateway to her eventually becoming a member.
Right.
Makes me super, super extra thankful that we did that.
made the
Right?
decision.
Because what would we do without her, right? So, I'm very glad we made that call.
Right. Right. So tell us about how you became a member of the company.
Well, I got a random Facebook message from John asking if I wanted to go help him at Adepticon in 2019.
It was at random.
Well,
guessing it was.
Yeah, it's left field for me, and I'm thinking, I don't even know what Adepticon is. And my husband looks over at my computer and he goes, "Go, go!" And I'm like, who's going to put the kids on the
Lovely and
bus?
talented Chris. Thank you once again. Yeah.
Like, who's going to put the kids on the bus? Who's going to do all these other things I do while you're working 12 crazy hours on a swing shift? He goes, "I'll take vacation. You go." And that was where we really kind of hit our magic point. I had done corporate sales at Borders back when that was a company.
thing.
Sadly, bookstores have kind of
sad.
slowly gone away. Some of them have come back. There's some great independent ones that I love visiting, but it's not
Right.
quite the same as it used
Coffee
to
and
be.
one on Friday in Lexington, Missouri, which was
Yeah.
lovely.
It's still one of my
Wow.
happy places, but I used to
Right next to the Radio Shack and the Blockbuster.
It's
It's awesome.
might as well have been.
I used to do a lot of corporate events for them, so I'm used to taking products off-site, keeping track of the inventory, doing the sales, all the little things that came with it. So Adepticon is just Julie and I in the booth. You guys are busy running tournaments, demo games. We're slammed. It's a little crazy. And I held down my end really well while Julie did demos nonstop.
Right.
And so she turned around at the end of the day, kind of tired, dazed looking, thinking, okay, now I've got to do these 12 things on my checklist. And I'm like, I found your checklist. Here's all your things done.
Yeah.
And I
it was
think
the
that was-
productivity. She was great at selling stuff.
Right.
Right. No question. Still is. I shouldn't use Pat then. She's amazing at selling things. But in
From being
addition
slow.
to that, right, you have some people, work in a booth like that doing things. And of course, you've been there too, right? We go to these events and you'll see somebody in a booth and they're sitting back in the back of the booth
On their phone.
doing whatever,
Yeah.
not engaging the
Twiddling their
customer.
thumbs.
Jennifer was right there, but also just see something needed to be done. And Julie was busy, one of us was busy. Jen just jumped right in and got it done in between customers. Just amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Yeah, that was when Julie decided to adopt me. And I think John just, we all know
I
Julie.
know what Julie said. So,
Don't we all?
that's easy. Yeah, that was an easy decision.
All right. So now you are the art dictator.
I am the art dictator.
Tell us a little bit about what that means.
He did not mispronounce director, by the way.
I
just wanna
did
go
not.
ahead and
No,
say
we
I
did.
do mispronounce a lot
Dictator.
of things, obviously.
Not that one.
But not that one.
Yeah, it's Dictator.
It is my domain, but I do allow other people to have their say, and I even occasionally take it into account.
She is a magnanimous dictator.
She is beneficent and diligent.
That too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we aren't going to ask you to say it. So don't worry about that.
Yeah, so I might have fallen in love with this company because you put prepper plate armor on a female model and you didn't sexualize her, and that was a very, very glorious thing. The other thing that I really love this company for is it is a balanced game. If you play your faction well, if you know what you're doing, if you plan around the different types of scenarios they are and bring the right types of models, you are going to be able to win. Your dice might hate you, you're not going to win every game, but you always have a chance. And so the thing
I'm just making notes over here. The things that I need to
She-
do
she
so that I
just-
can play a
She
game.
just went on record as having said that.
She did.
I'm recording that.
rules,
And
guys,
I
I
will
just
forever hold it
them.
against her.
Colin's cheering, dancing around his house.
No,
Jen said it.
the rule design is amazing, and this is important. And the reason I start with this is because how the models come to me is that the need is identified within the game for rules purposes and balance purposes. I'm not the one making everything up all the time.
Right.
We are going to give you a red panda.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I want a red panda.
Yeah.
I do occasionally get to decide that I want some random thing and get it done, but
We all do what Jen said.
what I get are the rules and the description of the model. And the great thing is they leave it as vague as possible.
Right.
The weapon description is really set in stone because obviously there's entire rules written around this. There's been some play testing.
Sure.
So I know exactly what kind of weapon they're wielding. I know what their armor value is. And then obviously looking at a faction, you kind of know this one's in leather, this one's in plate mail.
Right.
And so we go from there. But otherwise, things are pretty wide open. There's a little bit of chaos, and I've got to sit around and ask myself some really important questions like, can I make this a cool model? And the answer is obviously yes. And, should I make this a cool model? Also, obviously, yes. And so, I'm sitting at my desk all the time asking myself these really, really difficult questions.
But do you get answers?
I do. Usually it's yes.
So tell us about how you conceptualize one of these models. Once you have all of this information that the designers give you and the lore feeds back into you, how is it that you conceptualize a look and talk about how that carries through to our concept artists?
Absolutely. So I'm going to start by picking a model so you guys can kind of follow along the process.
I think that's really awesome. And which model are you going to pick?
We are going to talk about the Moon Talon, which releases on Black Friday.
We're going to drop this art as part of the
We are.
release
Let's
of the podcast. Okay.
talk about that for just a minute before you get into it. I know you're just, I can see
I know
it.
you're
You're ready to go.
it's great.
But the Moon Talon is one of our Black Friday releases. It is a very special model. It's a really cool model. I really don't think that Jen could have picked a better model to talk about this process with. And we will drop some of that art when we drop the podcast because you all are going to want to see this model.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, take it away, Jen.
All right. So the Moon Talon, the need that was identified was not every faction has a flying model. Certain factions, the Daklos is obviously there for the Trazerites. Falkar has the Parakir. Sholakir is now riding in for the Erdogar. So, there's definitely some flying models out there, but not everybody has the same access to them.
Right.
So we decided to do an allied flyer, and it was going to be a Griffin.
An allied flyer?
It could be
Nice.
considered that.
I see what you did there. That was good.
Yeah,
Ah.
I like the fun. So, I'm told it has a lance, it has a shield, and it's riding a griffin.
Right.
And that is kind of essentially the part that comes to me. And that's when I sit down and go, what is the weirdest, coolest way to look at this? And a lot of times it starts with a deep dive into Google on what are other people making?
Right.
Because we don't want to do the same thing.
We don't. We want to be distinct for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so for the griffin itself, the creature, we started looking through and it's like, okay, everything that I see is pretty much like wings out flying pose. So I came back to the group with, I want to try something different. And Matt Green, who does our production and our ScioCast, actually came back with, what if we played up the cat aspect? And we have the griffin on the ground in a pouncing pose instead of a flying pose.
Now, traditionally, just to say, traditionally a griffin, because we're not traditional.
We're
No,
not
we're-
In this case, and Jen's going to get into that, but traditionally a griffin is Eagle Front line back.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But this is
And-
Phelan.
Right. That's right.
But this is
and,
Phelan.
and Jen's
That's
a
right.
dictator also.
And I'm a dictator.
But what I want to say is that when she did that survey of the things that are out there, of course, is also our customers, our fans, players, are also people who play online games, other people's tabletop RPGs,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
And Griffin Riders, we're not the first people in the world to do a Griffin Rider.
Obviously.
Right.
Right.
They're in MMOs, they're in tabletop RPGs, they're in skirmish games. But typically, more often than not, they are based on that initial idea of
That's right.
the Earth mythos, Griffin, Eagle front, or some type of predatory bird up front, and a cat.
Right.
Eagle lion is where it originated. And so she kind of took it from that start point, but did something amazing with it.
Yes.
Right. And so, we decided cut on the pose with the cat-like aspect. Obviously, we're going to have wings because otherwise you can't be a flyer.
Right.
And
Kinda
then
it
for the
does.
front end, obviously, eagle was an option. We just done Sholakir. We had a beautiful eagle. I didn't really want to do another beautiful eagle, as stunning as that one is. I've always loved barn owls.
Yes.
There's a pair that raises their young in the sycamore outside our house. Their face is so amazing. And so I went back to the group with, here's what I want. And because I'm a dictator, I didn't listen to anything that they said, but we're all for it.
Fortunately for us.
Every one of us was against it, but I mean, here we are. I don't
Yeah, so the problem is to get something to concept art, I'm the one who sends the description to the artist.
That's right.
Oh,
So much has become clear. I don't know what to do with it.
Right.
Oh, there's so much you don't know about the little things that I sneak
That's
into.
really why we're here today.
Yeah. So we have to discover it and get it down on record. I want this,
Right. So the
the
important part
game
was
is
done.
balance thing.
The mount was really the thing that we had to get
Sure.
absolutely right. To some extent, the writer is a humanoid figure,
Right.
so that had some fewer decisions, but not no decisions. We wanted to decide on what's the armor value and what it's going to look like, because we don't want it to clearly identify with any faction we have.
Sure.
We wanted it something more generic. So what you're looking at is basically the armor's kind of like a chainmail with some leather over it and something like that. So, it can clearly fit with anything.
Right.
And then the next question I had to ask myself was, should it be male or should it be female?
Are we talking about the owl or the rider?
Well, actually, to me, all of the creatures are female. So we're talking about the writer. Grasgrave for writing in on all female dinosaurs.
Dictator, right? Yeah.
You can name yours whatever you want.
That's
Yours
right.
can identify however they
He's
want.
the boss, so.
But yeah, for the writer, it was, should it be male? Should it be female? And I've already mentioned, I love how we do females because every female in Phelan has just, innately everything that she needs to change anything in the world that she doesn't like.
Right.
And they're just so empowered. And so I do often do female figures. And so far, no one has fought me on that. And so for this one, the problem with doing a female rider would be that the Trazerites wouldn't be able to take it.
Right. Because.
They don't allow women in the military.
Right.
And so when I asked myself, should it be male or female, I came up with my usual answer, which is yes. So what I did was we created 2 head options. Once you put enough chainmail on someone with some leather over it, you don't know what they look like underneath. It's kind of shape concealing.
Sure.
So we just went with an androgynous body. We have a female head that has a beautiful braided coronet hairstyle. And then we also have a male head so that Trazerites can still play.
Awesome.
Now, I just want to say from a rules standpoint, right? The idea behind this, and Jen said it already, the idea behind this company, the Moon Talons, was a mercenary, an allied, fighting force that hired out its flyers to anybody.
Right.
So that, because we just couldn't have, all 16, 17, 18 factions, and we were going to get into some spaces that we didn't want to be trying to give them all a different flyer.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
There were some that absolutely fit where they belong, and some would be contrived. But
Sure.
but we weren't going to tell those factions you can't have a flyer either.
Right.
So they can go hire one from this company. But it wasn't trying to solve the problem of let's give a bunch of factions 2 flyer lines to take. So
Yeah.
the rule's going to be that when you take a Moon Talon, they don't truck with any other flyers in their company. So if you take it, you can't, if you're Drazerites, you can't also take a Dactylos.
Right.
If you're going to take it, it's the only flying model you can take.
Right.
Okay.
And
So typically, Drazerites would be not as likely to take this unless they wanted a charging combat flyer as opposed to the harasser that the
yes.
Dactylos Ravager is.
Which goes back to
So-
play style, which is a big part of the
Right,
balance.
exactly.
Find
So
your
yeah,
play
that's what I
style
was going
and
with, yeah.
And I love this interplay between design and the concept art
Yep.
and the model production.
while I am a dictator, there's a lot of back and forth between me and the
Sure, there
the
has
design side. Absolutely. And the lore side. You
Sure.
and I have some great conversations.
we absolutely do. We absolutely do. So, who did the concept art for?
So the Moon Talon is Neo as well.
Okay.
So same as the box art.
You're going to see a lot of style similarities between the box art that we're going to show and the concept
Absolutely,
art.
right.
So once you get the concept art,
Mhm.
where do you go from there?
So the concept art, once I have the finalized one that includes the beautiful color drawing and a breakdown to the side of details that the sculptor's going to need to see at different angles, like what does the shield look like, what does the lance look like, anything else that needs broken out. In this one, obviously the heads had to be drawn separately.
Right.
I send that off to a sculptor
Okay.
along with a verbal description and what we're trying to do with it. And then they are pretty much turned loose.
Now, we did show some pictures of a painted version of this model on Phalon Friday.
We did.
Listen to this; it'll be 2 weeks past
I will, but yes, go back
Because
and
Jeff
look
was
for
painting
Jeff's.
one.
because
right?
Jeff was painting one for
Yeah,
me.
Jeff Wing was painting one. So it's in the Discord paint and showcase,
It
whatever.
is. So
somewhere.
you kind of get an idea of just how wild the sculptor went with this. But tell us about the process of working with a sculptor. So you give this idea and the concept art to a sculptor, and the sculptor starts to work. What's the interplay between you and the sculptor as the project moves forward?
So some of that depends on how long we've had the sculptor, how well established they are in the field. This went to Chris Jackson, who is obviously a master at his work, and he knows the cuts almost better than we do. Although with Siocast, we've started pushing the boundaries, and so there is a little more back and forth on where are we going to cut this? Do you think you could pull this off?
For someone who's listening who doesn't know what you mean by cuts, you want to quickly.
Right. So when you buy a model and it is in 2 or 3 pieces and you're having to glue parts together, that digital sculpt was cut. It used to be a physical sculpt, which I'm sure is
Right.
why we still call it a cut.
Right.
But we're separating out the pieces to make sure that we can cast it with as few errors as possible and get a beautiful model to you.
Right.
And so the sculptor and I just talk through really how to make that work while still making it beautiful.
And you have to periodically check in with Matt Green about, mold depth,
Right.
where the channels are going to go, et cetera.
Right.
When you have like a proposal about where it's cut and how the model is turned, with how the model's going to sit in the mold, you consult with Matt about that. And you guys have got a great relationship.
Oh, we do. But I also went to his house and I did a Siocast
yeah.
training and made a mold with the
Yeah, you
model.
did. Right.
So, I went in and put in the time and the effort to learn his process so that while I may have only done it once, at least I have the basic concepts and it lets me head off some things. And then I kind of know which questions to ask him. Matt, can we do this way? Or is it going to give you this error and we need to go back to the drawing board, move the arm, change the pose somehow?
Right.
Most dictators don't take that step.
They
Right?
don't. Most
Historically,
dictators.
do they learn their minions' craft? No, they just tell them what to do. But,
But,
he's
but
in
the
there.
end result is important. I'm not going to settle for something that is less than awesome.
Oh,
And so if
that's
it requires me
Yeah.
learning
Who
how
wants
to
that?
be awesome.
Yeah, right. Excellent.
So you have this digital render, this digital sculpt.
Right.
Tell me about how the process was different when we had physical sculpts.
So when I first started, we were actually starting to transition out of the physical
We were kind of at
sculpts.
the very end
Just-
of our physical
yeah,
process.
just-
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I used to get a wire armature, which is kind of a bent up paperclip.
Right.
This is the skeleton of
Sometimes not kind of.
the model. Yeah, no, it's a bent up paperclip. And then green stuff would be blobbed on it. I may or may not see a picture at that point. But if we got towards the end and something was wrong or problematic, there were so few options to change it other than starting completely over.
Right.
And the other problem is when the cut happened, you're cutting through the green stuff down to the paperclip. And so those connection points were terrible.
Yeah.
And so you'll notice on some of the older models, trying to fit a hand on. And Matt Green and I have a plan. We are fixing that a couple different ways to try and make life easier going forward as we move into ScioCast. That was a 10-hour production meeting. So I also put in the time and effort there.
That's a pretty long production.
Hands-on
It
dictator.
was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally hands-on.
We went through every single model we make, every single piece, and made decisions about, can we simplify it? Can we fix it? Do we need to redo it?
All right, so you've got this sculpt, digital, whatever. What do you do with it after you have that? How does that become a model that we would buy in a blister?
So I take the STL, I plug it into ChituBox, I rearrange it at all of the appropriate angles and build the supports needed to 3D print it. And then I 3D print it in a special high temp resin that's designed for the ScioCast machine. I clean off all of the supports, make those masters beautiful. I consult with Matt Green about, how many can we fit in each mold.
Right.
And then I deliver those to him, and he does the next hard job, which is building the molds and balancing the molds.
Right. The production team really is two people at this point, right?
Right.
We have Jen, who's sitting here with us today, but then we also have Matt Green, who is our mold master in our ScioCast.
Yep.
What is he? How does he put it? Sciomaster, I think, is what he.
Sciomaster,
That's
yeah.
a good name for it.
That's his handle.
Right, on Discord, right. And it's very much true, right? And so it's very much a team effort. So Jen does her work and then passes it off to Matt, who is going to literally make the product that you're going to purchase.
And it's interactive. And every one they make, it gets smoother.
It does. And
Yeah.
they just get prettier and prettier and get better and better. It's magic.
It's fun to watch.
So very happy that we went over to this ScioCast and that we
Yeah, if you
control
could
that.
Now,
see
I have
the
a question,
chaos
I have a
that goes into
question
it.
about that. We were talking about it. We were in a conversation about making models the other day. And somebody was talking about the decision to move from physical sculpting to digital sculpting. And I said, I'm not the dictator, game designer mode, untrained mode. I said, I am not aware that there is a con for us
Mhm.
to digital sculpting. It's all pro. Would
Right.
you?
I don't know of a single con
Yeah.
or anything that
Yeah, I couldn't think of one.
Yeah.
it's so easy to repose, to make changes, to
Right.
do all kinds of things that would have been very difficult.
If you see something, if Chris Jackson sends you a picture of a render, like this is where I'm at right now,
Right.
and you say, "Ooh, I really want X changed," isn't it sometimes minutes,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Especially with Chris Jackson.
That-
a lot of times within
that's
20
crazy.
minutes, I've got
That
the
is
feedback.
crazy, right?
And we don't have, we don't have any, God bless these people that we work with, because we don't have any in-house sculptors or artists, so we rely on teammates,
Right.
partners
Yep.
to get these things done. And what a great, relationship that he could just turn around and say, "Oh, I've twisted that arm the other way or flattened it out so it fits in the mold better or whatever, it made a better
Absolutely.
cut," and boom.
And really,
she has it.
for the scene art, it's the same thing. Having gone to digital and having layers means that Neo can completely walk back. He loves to propose new, wild, exciting things because my management style is teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea, not to drum up workers and water.
Wow.
So make
Wow.
them fall in love with
A
Phelan.
hands-on literate dictator, right? I mean, that was pretty impressive.
Very
That's a-
philosophical.
Well, Rocker's education came in handy there.
Yeah, so make them fall in love with the world, make them feel like they own it and they're also experiencing it. And
Absolutely.
then the results that we get back are just
Yeah.
gorgeous. And so Neo does a lot of things where he wants to try something out and see if we like it. And so that's a layer. So
Right.
if I have to say, no, I'm sorry, Neo, it doesn't work this time, just in case that ever came up, I'd love to say yes.
Yeah.
It's a layer and it's seconds to change it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's one button and it's done. Yeah.
Right.
Which I think is fantastic. You said something as we go to wrap up here that I think is really important. You talked about having a relationship with our partners, the ones
Right.
that are in the production team, having them fall in love with the world and feel like they're a part of it. And that is something that the company as a whole tries to do, not just with its partners,
Right.
with its players as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I love about DGS Games and about the way that we've structured our world. We don't want you to just come in and roll dice with us. There's this community aspect. There's this feeling that you are
Yeah,
part.
we want you to help us
and-
build the world of Phelan.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It's not just us in this effort. It's a group effort, and I think that's amazing. And I love how that carries over into the production side of things too,
Absolutely.
right? Because if everybody's on board with Phelan,
Yeah.
we have a better product.
Right.
We have a better playership. We have a better world.
We do.
And I think that's amazing and one of the cooler aspects of this company. Jen, thank you so much for coming in with us today and talking through the art.
Yes, Dictator, thank you for deigning to associate with us today. Yes.
Lowering yourself
Yeah,
to
You behind the
Yes, you
scenes,
peasants.
the things
Yeah.
you never knew I was
Right.
doing.
pulling back the curtain.
Right.
Yeah, we learned as much as you.
It was just as awesome as you thought it was going to be.
Organized chaos.
So, you know what? That's something.
That's right.
How it
It's the
sits,
watchword.
right? Sometimes how it sits. Folks, thank you for joining us today. We are just thrilled to death that you're along with us on this journey. That is the Sleeping Grush podcast. You have viewed episodes 1 and 2 numerous times. We've got some great metrics on that. Thank you so much. Continue watching, listening, wherever it is you do, leaving those likes, leaving those comments. Tell us what you want to see and hear, because we are all ears. And just like we try to involve you in the world, we want to involve you in the podcast as well. So thank you all. We will see you next time. Until then, we'll see you around the table.
Spike and win.